Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Good? So this should be a fun session, huh? Are we going to have a fun session together?
We're going to have a great session, just Jaguar.
Okay, so my name is Minh Bui. I'm the founder and chairman of Beta Group. We have cinemas, prop tech, education business, and also going into healthcare. But I would love to learn more about each and every one of you. What have you been working in Vietnam? And tell us also one fun fact about yourself that makes it easier to connect.
Cool, awesome. I'll kick it off. Hi, friends. I'm Robert. Really great to meet you guys. I'm Vietnamese American. I grew up in the US and came to Vietnam about 3 years ago to build my first startup. I'm on my second startup now, and I'm building something in the AI and gaming space. I'm a lifelong gamer, so my fun fact is that I've been working on building my very own board game. And come hit me up if you ever want to play League of Legends or StarCraft. I'll pass it over.
Hi everyone, I'm Xuan. I'm a co-founder and a COO of Fonos. So in short, Fonos is the audio app for Vietnamese who are busy. So we provide audio content from audiobooks to like book summary. Last year we have podcasts and English audiobooks that we partner with Oxford University Press. So I'm full-time entrepreneur. I'm beside Fonos. Before that, I started F&B Bánh Mì 362 and also other business. Besides doing business, I really enjoy swimming. So if it's not at my company, I will probably go somewhere in the beach.
Hi everyone, my name is Marina Tran-Vu and I'm the founder and CEO of EQUO. EQUO is a sustainable brand that provides 100% plastic-free and compostable products. So basically we make straws and utensils out of materials like coconut, grass, and sugarcane. I was born and raised in Canada, so I'm a West Coast Vancouver girl. And an interesting fact about myself, I guess my hair has been every color of the rainbow. When I first came to Vietnam, I dyed it hot pink because corporate would not let me have any other hair color. And then from there I went to blue, purple, and now blonde. So if you like dyeing your hair, come and talk to me. I saw someone with purple hair, so.
That's awesome. Thank you. So I guess the first question is, why did you decide to come back to Vietnam and start your startup here? Was the reason personal or cultural, or is it a business decision?
All right, I'll kick that off. For me, I had always thought about Vietnam as the place where my parents came from. My parents are boat people. And I hadn't really thought about Vietnam as an opportunity until later in my 20s. Growing up in the US, I feel like I'd followed a very traditional career. I'd gone on to work at some very large tech companies. I spent 9 years, started off my career at Microsoft in their research division, went on and did the same thing at Google X, which is their moonshot lab, building out self-driving cars, advanced cybersecurity. It was great. I felt like I had really fulfilled the promise that my parents set me out to do. Sometime along the way, I was like, wait, actually, I'd never really explored my Vietnamese side. For me, it was a very deeply personal reason to come back. I grew up in a mixed household. You know, my mom is Vietnamese Chinese, my dad is Vietnamese, and my dad was not the father I wish he could be. It sucked to see him leave our family. It was a divorce early on in my life. And I grew up speaking actually more Chinese than Vietnamese. And I came to become almost ashamed of my Vietnamese half growing up. You know, instead of joining BSA, I joined CSA. And somewhere along the line, I was just like, shoot, you know, my mom had always been telling me, hey, Robert, your dad's always gonna be your dad. You should forgive your dad. And you know, she's so right. My mom is so right. It took me a lot later into my late 20s, early 30s. I was like, hey, I tried to work in China. It was great, I love Beijing. But I've wanted to come back to Vietnam for so long and explore that other side of my culture, my heritage. And so coming back to Vietnam was just amazing to be able to speak the local language, grow deeper into my connection, and then reconnect with my father. And so that's been a big part of my personal journey. The opportunity here is huge. 100 million population, super fast growth, gaming in particular is a huge market. And then drawing upon my AI expertise, I was like, wow, this is going to be easy. Spoiler, it wasn't. I'll pass it on to the little speakers, but it was a combination of that personal reason for wanting to come back, thinking through like the huge opportunity here in Vietnam, and then also like just being able to have great food. I love bánh hỏi, so food is a big reason why I'm here too.
So for me, I grew up in Vietnam. I was born in Bulgaria, and I whole time grew up here. And where I grew up, I only see people having their own business, like very small shop at home. So I don't really know, but like when I was young, I think I will have my own business when I grew up. And back then, I feel like working for some company is very different. Like it's never been in my head. So that's why the moment I'm like 20, I want to build my own business after business. Sometimes I really look back and I wish I could work for someone to learn from them, but I never regret my journey. So yeah, that's how I come up with building my own company, because I don't have second option.
But why did you pick Vietnam as a place to start?
Because I'm Vietnamese. Yeah, mostly because I'm Vietnamese, but also during my journey, I opened company in Singapore. I also bring my chain to Korea, and opening the company there make me recognize that Vietnam is also one of the ideal country for you to start your first business. So I'm just lucky to happen to be here, but if I know better, I still think I would choose Vietnam as the first business for me.
So for myself, I didn't come to Vietnam by choice. Prior to this, I built my career in Canada. I was working for companies like Unilever, Bacardi, LG, doing innovation, product launches, marketing for them. But then basically, long story short, a couple of years ago, my father got diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. So I came back to Vietnam for what was supposed to be 1 year. I had a whole life. I was engaged, everything. I had friends. I came back to Vietnam to help out the family for about a year. I was supposed to move back. Then a whole bunch of stuff happened. I got unengaged, COVID happened. So all that happened, and I started EQUO also as kind of a side project. It was during the time when I was actually working as head of marketing for a company called California Fitness and Yoga, like a big gym here. So I was working there, realized working for a Vietnamese company wasn't really for me either. And then EQUO, I started out kind of became like my savior, because I had, no job, no family because I couldn't see them because of COVID, had no relationship either. So all that combined really made me start EQUO and kind of put everything into it. So wasn't by choice, but I was happy I stayed.
So I guess it's the combination of all the different factors, right? It could be personal, it could be cultural, and also business decision. And it just makes sense, given how the country is a fast developing nation and a lot of opportunities here. So I want to ask you, how does the business landscape in Vietnam differ from the other nations, the other countries that you have been working on? And how did you adapt to those differences?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So it's like, hey, how is business different in where I grew up and where I worked, mostly in the US and in Vietnam? My first startup was really humbling. I really messed up on a number of things, where I was trying to build a construction tech company to help blue collar workers find jobs easily, quickly, and with trust. What was difficult about that was that people here, they don't trust each other. They're really afraid of middlemen. And I came in with the expectation that, human capital would be a little bit different, working with employees here, the customers would be great, and even better, the workers would be appreciative of the work that you do for them. Spoiler, they're not. They're very likely to not show up on time. The suppliers don't want to pay you. Even if they're big corporates, they're like, oh, actually, this project. We don't need those construction workers. But we found ways around it. One of the things I learned that I thought was really illuminating for me was that things are really all done on Facebook and Zallo. And so to quickly grow my business, one of the tips and tricks I had was actually I could buy Facebook groups because that's where all the workers were. A lot of people find jobs on Facebook. Actually, I found my maid on Facebook. And as I started looking on Facebook, there's like all these communities. So if I buy these Facebook groups and consolidate them together, it's like, wow, I actually have 50, 60, 100,000 members really quickly in my groups. And then I could use Facebook analytics and scraping to figure out, hey, their Facebook ID, and I could connect that with their phone number, and I can start calling people because people here are really receptive to that. If someone called me in the US, I'd be like, oh, spam, hang up. Here they're like, oh wait, actually, if it's not life insurance, then they're a little bit likely to pick up and talk a little bit more. But these little things I've learned is just like a different way of working in Vietnam that I found really exciting, because once you start to adapt to the environment, there's so many tips and tricks that you're able to pick up and grow from. I'll save the other ones for the rest of the speakers to share.
That's really cool.
For me, I feel like trying to understand Vietnam market is remind me of the story of the blind people trying to guess how elephant look. And some of them will think it's like an ear or the tail or the leg. I start with medical and then pharmaceutical and then F&B and now publishing and tech startup. So different industry, I'm not saying how different between Vietnam and other countries. I think already only within Vietnam is very different from different industry. And it's even different within my company. For example, I have a tech team, and the way the culture and the tech team work make me feel like, wow, Vietnam is very young, very updated, they're very fast. If I don't move faster, I might be, slower than them, I might lose opportunity. But that's just one aspect of the market. There's some other side. For example, I work with publishing, and they're very different. The way they work is very different, and that's a very different Vietnam. And for me, I learned that every time I jump to different industry, I learn another side of Vietnam that I don't know. And I'm Vietnamese. I grew up here. I was so confident starting Fonos, thinking I have a lot of experience before. But all of the things I know before, like 10 years, I use it all up within one first year. And then I have to start learning again and like open mind. I try to be with the tech team. At the same time, I try to understand the publishing people. So yeah, that's many factors, and it depends on which industry you are in, who are your customer. They have different DNA, and it's your job to figure it out.
Thank you, Xuan. How about you, Marina?
So I've been fortunate enough to work in a couple different countries: Canada, US, Korea, Hong Kong, and Vietnam. And the thing I found very different about Vietnam versus a lot of those countries was a lot of those countries were, yes, more developed, but also more structured and rigid. Whereas in Vietnam, I have this saying that I found out about Vietnam, which was, if you can think it, Vietnamese people can do it. And that's also kind of the attitude that I've seen in Vietnam, is like everyone's willing to innovate or to do something. Like, it's kind of like going to a restaurant and ordering off a menu and asking, hey, can I substitute this? And a lot of places would be like, maybe, no. Whereas Vietnam's like, yeah, whatever you want, So that was a different sort of attitude that I found was so interesting. The other aspect is also the fact that culture plays a huge part in the workplace. So, Vietnamese culture is a lot about community, and that is really the case when you're at work. So your employees and your team, they're not just like, oh, we're work buddies. Bye, I clock out and I don't want to talk to you after work. They are like, let's spend lunch and dinner and maybe the weekends and maybe like sleepover together at the office. You know, it's very much so kind of that environment. And the last thing I'll say is kind of tied to that is that there are nuances within Vietnamese culture that you're not going to find anywhere else. I would say one of the most jarring things I experienced when I started working at California was like, there was this one time at lunch, I saw like feet kind of like peeking out at the bottom of like an office, right? It's glass for the entire office. And I was like, oh my gosh, did people just like faint or pass out? That wasn't the case. They were all taking a nap, you know, on like yoga mats. And then there would be like feet peeking out from under desks as well. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting, but it's a part of the culture. So there's certain things like taking naps, you know, taking lunches together, you know, tete, having really big birthday celebrations for, you know, the bosses, the owners of the company, having your face plastered everywhere. That's part of the culture in Vietnam. And it's very special. It's very different. And I didn't see that anywhere else.
Was it easy for you to adapt to all those surprises?
No. I mean, like, for myself, you know, I wouldn't want anybody seeing, like, my mouth wide open while I'm sleeping, right? Like, at my desk, because that's how I sleep. So it's not attractive. But, you know, like, I wouldn't want to see that. And I thought that's a very personal thing, you know, to fall asleep at your desk or fall asleep in an office is a very personal thing that you would do only at home. But again, this kind of talks to the whole element of Vietnam being a very different sort of environment and culture where there's a blend of community, family, personal in your work life as well.
Okay, so let's talk about money. Obviously, to start a business, you need funding, right? And you can, of course, always go on Shark Tank and raise some money. But I mean,
Mr. Shark Tank himself.
The next season is coming soon. But I want to ask you, what are the sources of funding and investment that you have found valuable for OVs? You know, when you start a business.
Yeah, for sure. I'll start off first. For me, I raised a lot of my funds from my network. My network was really back in the Bay Area. And so I raised money from Y Combinator. It's a popular accelerator in the US. And so they were really helpful with introducing us to a bunch of angels. For us, that initial check was enough to get us to where we are today. I'm super excited because we just signed our first AAA game studio. And that's kind of gotten us to the point where we're ramen profitable, meaning we can just pay ourselves a basic salary to eat ramen. Fundraising is really interesting. I think that there's many sources of fundraising, and it's kind of thinking through, well, how are you finding the right partners to go with you on this adventure, this journey? Fundraising is also a really strategic decision that I think a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about, but it distracts from your business. So how do you minimize the time on fundraising and then maximize the time on building your products, talking to your customers, and then worry about the fundraising later? That's really been our approach, and that's been serving us really well.
So for me, I start, you know, I can talk from my own experience. I feel very thankful because I have first 10 years doing F&B, especially bánh mì. So it's something that make me see a different world from bánh mì, a very traditional local business compared to startup. And that make me question a lot because you know, one of my supplier of bánh mì, you will not recognize her as the owner of something, but she own many of, you know, like a small bánh mì place that bake bánh mì for each district to give to different stores. And she bought houses in the US and Canada. She sent her kid to overseas to study. And she acting very normal. And I talked to her, not just one person. I have a meat supply, I have a vegetable supply. They all like doing business for like 20 years more. And they told me that with them, the money go out of their pocket in the morning, and in the evening they go calculate the money and they put more money in the other pocket. So that to them is business. And then that's how I see business. So with that mindset, when I come to Fonos, or even back then I raised a bit of money for 362 to expand to Korea. I have that mindset, and I'm grateful I learned that lesson before I jump into something very chaotic. And I just see that we have to build a real business that sustains. We need money from investor maybe to help us to pump in at the beginning, but we cannot depend on that. So that's why in day one with Fonos, when me and my co-founder, we talk about funding. First, we put down our money. We work our ass off for the first 1.5 years, and then we very carefully think, who will be our investor? Like, who can make us like grow faster? And what is the dynamic, how we work together? So we're not really rush and jump into raising a lot of fund. But yeah, to me, I think that's a very important lesson. And up to now, like Fonos is on year 5, I still have a very good relationship with our investor from day one to the latest one. So I think it's important to ask yourself, are you sure you want this money? And why do you want it? And who do you want it? Like, you have to willing to turn down and say no to the investor that you don't see it's fit. But most importantly, funding is just one of the things. It's not a real business. The real business is day one. We launched Fonos with only 6 books, but we charged them double than Spotify at that time, because we believe that if I provide you a premium, a good product, there are people out there willing to pay for us. And if not, this is not a business. We should close down. So that's how we approach with funding.
Thank you. What about you, Marina?
So I didn't raise a dime from Vietnam. All the money I raised was outside of Vietnam, Canada, US, Singapore, Indonesia, not Vietnam. When I first started my journey, I did not know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know what a startup even was, or angel investors. So I think my journey was very different. It was kind of a learning experience. And it was a lot of luck. To be honest with you, I was very lucky that I knew a friend who just happened to have a startup for 10 years. And he introduced me to someone in a startup accelerator called Techstars. I got into that. Then I got casted for a Shark Tank, went on there. And then I learned about this thing called like pitch decks. You know, apparently that's how you introduce your company to investors to hopefully, get some money. And I sent it out to every VC possible in Vietnam, not knowing what I was doing. And every one of them either rejected me or didn't respond, rightfully so, because it was not very well prepared. Going through that experience and planning on raising later this year, I would say that the Vietnam environment for raising money, VCs, it's still under development. I would say that there are a few larger players in the VC environment in terms of investment, but I think people are still a little bit more conservative when it comes to Vietnam VCs for raising money. So they're very traditional, more of the tech, health tech, edutech, maybe fintech. I was making straws. So people weren't really like, this is going to make money. So it was a lot more difficult for a business like mine to raise money. I will say now, though, that the startup community is developing, and as more VCs and more angel investors and family offices start to come about, I think there is a large opportunity here. But it's not easy to start a startup here.
Thank you so much. That has been very interesting. So we're running out of time, but before we end this session, maybe just one last question, and if you can answer in just one sentence. What has been the biggest misconception about the Vietnamese market that you want to share with the audience here in one sentence?
This is tough with just one sentence. Human capital is something that I thought was going to be a lot easier.
But it's not.
But it's not. And it's because the people in Vietnam are so talented. I love working with Vietnamese people. But it's harder to identify like top tier talent because it's not the same as how I had traditionally recognized and pattern match. And so the smartest people I know are from backgrounds that would really surprise you guys, and just really excited to continue finding these hidden gems.
Very good answer, but that was 5 sentences.
Run-on sentence.
I think what popped up in my head is cheap labor. This is what the conversation between me and my friends who found other company. The first one, he's have 1,000 debt to do the app for other market, and they say that developer in Vietnam used to be cheap. They're not cheap anymore. And second thing that another friend told me that, hey Xuan, you know what? I thought Vietnamese is cheaper to recruit people, which is true. But there's another thing that I've learned after I opened the market in Indonesia. That cheap labor cost me time.
And then it's not cheap anymore,
It's
right?
not cheap anymore.
What about you, Marina? 1 sentence.
Okay. Don't trust resumes.
Okay, that's a good one. Thank you, everyone. A round of applause
Thank
for
you,
our
everyone.
speakers.